We are the Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. And in 2006, legislatively, our name was changed officially in state legislature to CAL FIRE. And people ask, why did you do that? You know, well, we're still the state of California, we're still a department. But we have about 6,000 sworn personnel in our department, roughly. Over 50% of those people work in some sort of municipal contractual environment for a local government. We have more paramedics employed in our department than any fire department in the state of California. And every single one of our 358 state fire engines accomplishes and is trained to accomplish what we call an all-risk mission. So, you know, sometimes I call them myth busters, you know, and there's always questions out there that the fire service is always really good about saying, well, they don't do that, or we do that, or they do this. And so, you know, what I want to make sure everyone understands is that the 21 fire engines in our unit here, and the communities they serve are very connected to the communities. Every member of every engine company is a minimum emergency medical technician. We have complements of extrication equipment, low-angle rescue equipment, swift water equipment. And you know, while I talked about being 29 years in the fire service, I'm somewhat removed from this. And the last introduction I want to make for the day is Deputy Chief Mike Webb. And he is my operations chief and oversees what I call things with wings or red lights and sirens. And so that's the most fun part of our job. And unfortunately, I'm more like Allison these days. I get to oversee a lot of different things and don't necessarily always get to dip my toes in the fun stuff as much as I would like to. But I do wear a couple of different hats in the unit, and one of them is the fire chief for the Placer County Fire Department. So we serve both advanced life support and basic life support as the county fire department in Placer County, operating 6 engine companies, 1 truck company, fully staffed out of 5 stations, serving the unincorporated areas, 58,000 people within Placer County. So that's one of those other things I have to do. And hence the reason that the staff is so important. And Deputy Chief Mike Webb will be able to answer a lot of those questions throughout the day about the operations. But I'll turn it over to these guys here a little bit and they'll kind of show you an example. Yes, sir.
Question. What is your role in South County?
You talking about Higgins? So great question. Higgins is one of the cooperative fire protection agreements that the state affords us to be able to do is what's called Amador Plan. The reason it's called Amador Plan, it was developed in 1964 by a state legislator in Amador County as a benefit to a local district that could, it was supposed to be designed short term, but it's evolved into long term, and it was to provide that assistance to local government in the non-declared fire season. And so Higgins, Station 21, was actually the very first Amador Plan contract initiated in the state. We have hundreds and hundreds of them all over the state right now. In Nevada-Yuba Placer unit, we have 5 of them, Loma Rica, Higgins, and 3 of them in Placer County, Alta, Colfax, and Auburn headquarters. And in a nutshell, what it means is that if the state determines with the local government that we have a state mission out of that fire station, and there's also a hole that we can fill for the local government entity. And the state already has a facility, we already have the fire engines, we have the trained people, and so that local government entity provides the funding to enhance the staffing in the non-declared fire season where we would be forced to reduce our staffing levels. So in the case of Higgins, they pay roughly $200,000 a year for a 6-month period to enhance our firefighter staffing, and they get a fully staffed engine company out of Station 21. Same as in Loma Rica and the other ones in Placer. It's one of the greatest, I believe it's one of the greatest value-added benefits that CAL FIRE brings to our commitment to local governments around the state. It's best bang for the buck, and it's a real tie to the community. So these folks here, also out of Nevada City Station here, serve an area up Highway 20 from essentially north end of town all the way up to this side of Zeebrite up on Highway 20 that falls outside of the fire district. So it's not within Nevada Consolidated's fire district, it's deemed unprotected. Unprotected areas that are outside of a fire district ultimately fall back to Office of the State Fire Marshal. Office of the State Fire Marshal is an arm of CAL FIRE. So we are oftentimes saddled with that responsibility. what we were able to work out through Chief Matthias and some of his staff here, Chief Wallen was a big component of working this out. Our training academy had extrication equipment that they were able to give us to staff these 2 fire engines out of Nevada City with some of the all mission or all risk hazard tools that you see here, extrication equipment, struts, generator, bags, etc., which allows us to serve that unprotected area up on Highway 20 very well. So I'll turn it over to the engine company, they give you a little demo on stuff.
Cool. So again, just thank you for being here. This is our station, so we're proud to have everybody here, and it's nice to have visitors here. It's kind of hard because we don't have a sidewalk out here on Ridge Road, so it's not safe to walk in here, and people rarely accidentally drive in here. So with that, you guys are always welcome here. We like having visitors. If you have grandkids, kids, whatever, bring them by. They can climb on the engines. We can show them around. So with that, welcome. So what we're most known for, obviously, being CAL FIRE, is wildland firefighting. And yeah, that is our bread and butter. We have to be good at that. We have to be the best at that. So right here, we just have an example of a very basic wildland complement. We have hand tools for cutting hand line, hose for progressive hose lays, chainsaw for cutting brush, mop-up kits. Most of our time spent mopping up fire, believe it or not. Putting it out is the exciting part, but we're there days after the fire's out mopping it up. So again, the progression of the fire department and our role in the state in protecting the citizens of California, we are all risk, so we have full structure complement as far as SCBAs, chainsaws for ventilating roofs, long-handled tools for pulling sheetrock. So we, again, are all risk, so we go inside fires, and we go inside buildings that are on fire. So we have a very good relationship with all the local government agencies, Nevada County Consolidated, Nevada City, Grass Valley City, Oak Hill, Paradale, Chicago Park, just to name a few. And we respond to all the structure fires in the county, mutual aid. So we go and we operate as just what you would think of as a normal fire department. And we help out in any way that we can. And so again, we have that relationship with them. We train with them, not just on the forestry side, but on everything. So we also carry rescue gear. So we carry a full complement of rope rescue system, which Shane's going to demonstrate for us in just a minute. And then this is one of the best additions in my mind that we've got on the engine recently, because it's a really helpless feeling when you're out of county and you're in a rural area and you don't have extrication tools, and you come upon an accident and there's somebody pinned in a car and you have very limited tools such as a set of irons to try and pry them out. So I feel much better driving this engine, having a full complement of tools on there. And again, the progression of CAL FIRE, we're adding these things to our engines, which is, as a company officer, I don't want to be in a pinch having my guys try and pry somebody out of a car with those. That is going to help somebody, and we're going to get somebody out of a car to a hospital within that golden hour. So our tools are expanding, our scope is expanding, and our skills are expanding. And us as firemen, we're very excited about that, because we get to learn more, we get to use more tools, and if you're in the fire service, that's what you want to do. So with that, who's going first? Okay. So Jason Nicholson right here, he's a firefighter, and these guys, the firefighters, are the ones doing the work on incidents. So if we pull up on a vehicle accident, Jason, go ahead and take it from here. He's going to be the one setting this up and manipulating these tools.
Like Sam said, my name is Jason Nicholson. I work here at Station 20, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about the extrication stabilization tools that we have. So some of them we have the Rescue 42s, and I just point. We have the Rescue 42s that are a max rate of 18,000 pounds, so we can stabilize just about anything we need with that, and we'll wrap those and stabilize it with these ratchets and pulleys that we have to make everything stable if the car is overturned or flipped or anything in that manner. And then we have the airbags. The airbags are all rated differently, but the smaller airbag can lift anything up to about 7 inches. The middle-sized one's 9, the large one's 11 inches, and it's 13,000, 20,000, and 35,000 pounds. So we can lift and stabilize just about anything with these 3 airbags. And this is the control unit that we have with it, and simply just attach an SCBA bottle to it. We have it on the engine. Super simple, concise, very nice tool to have. And then we have the power unit. with the ram, the cutters, and the spreaders, or the jaws as everyone likes to call them. And it's all hydraulically ran. The ram is a 23-inch ram that extends to 36 inches. And the cutters, they're about 47 pounds, and they can open up to about 11 inches, and it allows us to cut just about anything on a car. And the spreaders, they have a pulling force of 6,000 pounds and a spreading force of 26,000 pounds. They weigh about 50 pounds, so it's tiring after a while running it, but they're awesome tools to have, and we really appreciate having them.
We actually just took the time to go ahead and set up a simple rope system, and we're just going to show you how it functions, because ropes are one of those things, if you don't use them a lot, unless you're a rock climber or you're just an avid outdoorsman, you're probably not going to know what you're looking at. So Firefighter Morgan's just going to go over it briefly, and we'll show you how it works. This system is awesome. I've been on a lot of incidents. I've used these on wildland fires. Injuries on steep hills where it wasn't easy to carry them off and it was night, so we didn't have the option to hoist them off with the helicopter. So a very versatile tool. Typically it would be used in the river canyons, on water rescues, vehicles over the embankment where we're having to haul them up the hill a significant distance, for instance up Highway 20, off of Harmony Ridge, up in that area. So take it from here, buddy.
All right, I'm Shane Morgan, I'm a firefighter. This is Firefighter Choppy. He's going to go ahead and hook up over here. So what we have set up for you is a 3-to-1. All it means is for every 3 feet we pull, he's going to move 1 foot. And having it set up like this makes it a lot easier than just trying to hand over hand a 180-pound patient that we have. So once you're hooked up, let me know and we'll just start pulling.
Good. So there's a lot more that goes into this. If we show up in an incident, there's going to be a lot of positions that are filled. There's going to be a safety, somebody who's double checking all of our knots. There's going to be an edge attendant, somebody in charge of calling out what exactly is being done. So while it's looking very simple right now, this is basically just to show you guys what a rope system looks like, because it is actually, the more you know about it, the more fascinating it is, and there's so much you can do with this system. So as he's pulling right now, Firefighter Shabria, he's essentially our victim getting pulled up a hill, and it just takes a lot less effort to use than it would be, like I said, a hand over hand. You can lift an extreme amount of weight with this system with minimal people, and we're usually understaffed on incidents, unfortunately. So this is just a great system for us to have, again, on our engine when we're out of county or driving around the county. It's a versatile tool, and as a resident of the county myself, with these engines having the tool complement that they do, I feel better living in this county because I know there's 2 more engines here staffed year-round that can respond to any incident and essentially handle any incident that's thrown at them, or go and assist the local agency. So again, this is a very, we have a strict timeline today, so this is a very brief overview. If anybody ever wants to come back here and go over our engine, we will be more than happy to show you anything that's on there. You can put the right PPE on and you guys can use the tools. So with that, thank you for coming, and just like I said, keep on the timeline. I believe we're about ready to start moving.
We're going to go down and kind of meander down below to the Dozer Bay, and Sean Entz, one of our operators, is going to show you. You got to take it easy on them. They are very, very proud of their Dozer. So I told them keep it under 2 hours. We know it's yellow. We know it pushes a lot of dirt, but no, they're such a valuable piece of the puzzle. And I will tell you, in all seriousness, Joe's not here today, but probably most of you saw the 60 Minutes episode that was done after the campfire, and the efforts that were performed by a Dozer operator in Paradise, sheltering people within the safety cab of the Dozer, coming through backyards of homes in order to push burning and disabled vehicles off the roadway so that we could egress and evacuate people. That person who did that was Joe Kennedy, and he's one of the 2 operators that works at this fire station. And the Dozer he was driving suffered severe damage and is now being retired, and so they get to show you their replacement. But he is truly one of there was a lot of heroes that day, but Joe, who's a very humble man, was one of the true unsung heroes, and undoubtedly in my mind saved lives that day, saved citizens' lives by putting them inside. And no one trained him to do that. He based those actions on instinct and just his making that hard choice of what he thought was right and putting himself and those people in harm's way. And so if you ever get a chance to see Joe, probably many of you know him. He's a humble guy, but shake his hand and say thanks. This is, I would say, as a compliment, our newest unit. The transport is 2019. The Bulldozer, which replaces the Dozer that Joe Kennedy used in the campfire, is a 2018, and the trailer is a few years old as well. So it's a Caterpillar D6 XL, and I'll let Sean Entz, one of our two operators here at Nevada City. Sean is also got an interesting history in that he came to CAL FIRE from local government fire protection. And he was a captain right across the chain link fence there at Nevada Consolidated Fire District. And he came to us, and one of the things that drew me to our agency was the diversity and the things that you can do across different landscapes, different geographies, different disciplines. And I often say, if you in a 30-year career in CAL FIRE, if you get bored with what you're doing, that's your fault, not the department's fault, because the opportunities are endless. And Sean is a great example of someone who brought, his firefighting skills to the agency, brought training and experience in heavy equipment, was trained formally at our academy in heavy fire equipment operation, and now is one of the two guys that runs this piece of equipment. So I'll turn it over to Sean.
So as the chief said, this is a 2019, the truck was just recently put in service. It was a 1990 International prior to that. Had seen a lot of service life, so it was pretty well used, but we kept it in good shape. The Dozer also was a D5, so we've stepped up to the horsepower and capabilities of what we have now from where we were at. So the capability of what we can do with this machine versus the machine it replaced is this: we can run steeper ground. It's a bigger tractor, so it has more horsepower, so more initial attack capability. We outfitted it with a full set of GPS, topo maps. So if anybody want to get inside of it, we'll help you up in there to check it out. And we have full layout of the whole state, so we know canyons, ridges, roads, all that stuff off the tractor. The Dozer is staffed 24/7 year-round with 2 operators. So this is ready to roll just like a fire engine. We respond with the equipment, code 3, lights and sirens to the incident, unload, go to work. This is part of the strategic operation with CAL FIRE. One of the things we do is everything in this agency has a place. The crews have a place, the aircraft has a place, the dozers have a place, the engines have a place. We start removing those components, that wheel starts to lose cogs in the wheel. We stop losing momentum. So with CAL FIRE, and the chief mentioned the amount of money and resources that the department is allocating, we are also upgrading the equipment and the capabilities of the equipment. So just since I've been here, the technology has gone tenfold. Also with technology comes problems. So the new technology has hiccups, but we work through them. I don't know if Chief talked about the automatic vehicle locating system, which is a mapping system that is, for the law enforcement side, is an MDT. We get our calls dispatches off that system, tells us where we're going. It's been pretty beneficial for us because, like a chief officer, we're the only one driving this piece of equipment. We don't have anybody riding with us. There's nobody helping us out. So we have to make sure that information feeds is nice. Instead of trying to look at a cell phone or GPS, small GPS, it's all coming to you right here in live time. Operationally, we get to a fire, we unload, tie in with the chief officers or the people that are on scene, get our objectives, and go to work. A lot of stuff we do with the leader's intent and just meeting the mission of the fire. So there's nobody really watching us, so we take pride in doing a good job and making sure stuff's done right behind us. As you know, Joe Kennedy, my partner, was at the campfire, and that's just shows the different aspects of the job. He technically really wasn't engaged no longer into firefighting. He was engaged into structure protection, life and property, helping other crews out, getting fire engines out of bad situations.
Opening up roads
And
with blocked vehicles.
blocked people, abandoned vehicles were in bad situations. So, and I've dealt with the same thing, you know, power poles and stuff that block egress and access for people to evacuate. We've had to just deal with power lines, power poles. I don't want to get on the PG&E subject, but it's the different types of jobs we're engaged in. So, any questions? Go ahead, sir.
I just had a question. You know, you mentioned, you know, when you're fighting a fire and you're breaking through lines, is there, you know, a sealed kind of air system inside that?
Yes. So that dozer there, the new dozer, yes. The old dozer was not. The old dozer was just pretty much a construction dozer. The dozer that we ran prior to this was actually a Hurricane Katrina machine. So it was Hurricane Katrina that the state had bought used dozers and retrofitted them to try to meet our purpose. Amador, Colorado actually had one as well, and there was a few of those passed around. This dozer here is completely purpose-built for CAL FIRE. And this package that is on this now is being sold as a forestry package designed by CAL FIRE, available to contractors to buy the package that we built. The dozer does now have a compressed air system that compresses the air in the cab like an airplane. It is under trial, so we're still working out some bugs, which we've had a few so far, but we're getting through that. But the old dozer, the cab filled full of smoke, so just like being outside. You know, sometimes you got to help turn to the wind to get some fresh air and let it kind of get it exchanged out, and then go back to work. But yeah, your eyes be watering, and it gets not as bad as the guys on the ground, or the folks on the ground. But yeah, you get your fair share.
And I think I kind of opened the door to letting the folks see what's inside that cab. So, and I think it's a good segue. You know, what Sean's talking about, he's a little humble about it, but you know, picture the terrain we have here in Nevada County. You know, up to and including, you know, 35 to 40% slopes to where we can no longer operate heavy equipment and we have to go to hand crew operations. But at those percentage of slopes, you know, the visibility front and backward and sideways, you add in smoke conditions, you add falling trees, you add rolling rocks, and you know, the old adage of these guys have to do things by the seat of their pants really comes to play. And unfortunately, you know, with the evolution of this equipment and the more horsepower and the more ability it has, we also demand a lot more of these guys. And unfortunately, we have seen the line of duty death rates go up with our bulldozer operators in the last 5 years, more I think than it's been historically in our department. So, you know, we're really looking at that from a safety standpoint, because we can't afford to lose anyone, no matter you know what they're involved in. So, but I think it's good for those of you who want to climb up and look inside, and maybe we could open both doors so they go up one side and down the other. We'll need some guys to help them up and down the tracks, but anyone at once, I think it's important to sit in that seat and imagine what they are seeing or not seeing when they're going up or down, you know, a 25 to 30% slope. Heavy smoke air engines are used in elements they were never designed from the factory to be used in. So, end of the day, keeping those men and women safe on board falls on that. So this shop, yes sir.
Well, after you finish.
Yeah, so this shop is one of our newer additions to the compound. It was built when the station was redesigned here, and it's very much a state-of-the-art shop, you know, statewide. So we're very proud of that. It's one of our 2 maintenance shops. The other one's at Auburn headquarters. So yes sir.
So are you following a formula based on age and vehicle miles traveled to replace your equipment, or is this more or less keep things going as long as possible?
Well, so yes and yes. So we have the program is based on months and an annual and mileage combined, and it's what we call an A service, a B service, and a C service. And they are done at very specific times based on the time of the year, and the mileage on the vehicle. And then in the bigger picture, every vehicle has a lifespan to it. And for vehicles that operate in a Code 3 environment, meaning they respond with lights and sirens, they have a maximum age of mileage that they can get to before they're surveyed out. So if that answers your question. Yeah. So, okay, let's head over to the shop.
Watch your footing around the big red lift on the floor. It can be a tripping hazard.
This shop was designed for a number of different applications. Everything here is designed for heavy apparatus, fire engines, crew buses, etc. And as you can see, they got a full boat right now. This and the one bay over are older engines, and it's a good representation of, this engine is probably a 94, 95 vintage, but you can see the abuse that it's taken from the environment that we put these vehicles into. And so the mechanics, they know these pieces of equipment inside and out. This is what we call a CCV or an ECT, Emergency Crew Transport. And this is what you're going to see a little later on, and what we haul our fire crews out of Washington Ridge in all over the state of California. And then at the very far end is one of our brand spanking new fire engines that we just took delivery of, that we'll be putting in service in the unit. So feel free to walk through. Mike, you want to come on over for a second?
Believe it or not, we receive them and we have to go.
Welcome aboard, everybody.
So anything to add about your shop?
I think you covered it.
Well, he's a man of few words, That's what you get for working with wrenches your entire life, right? So
We keep busy on a daily basis, and it is a challenge. Believe me, it is a challenge, but it's fun and very rewarding. So.
Mike's humble. I hired him off from another agency where he did a lot more of the fleet management and didn't really understand just how hands-on he had to get here in Cal Fire. We are a very roll your sleeves up, get your hands dirty, but he's adapted to it well. And Mike came to us from the private sector about a year ago, I guess, something like that. 10 months. Yeah, and it's just been a wonderful addition, tremendous amount of experience, and I love good mechanics because you pit them against each other, and it's a competition on who's going to take their coveralls off last at the end of the day. So Mike's a good example of that. So anything to add?
Oh, we stay plenty of busy and try to keep everything rolling for the rest of you guys.
So is this always staffed?
Yes.
So even on a fire, you still bring vehicles in?
We do. Yeah, that's a great question, Ed. That not only do these guys do the preventative maintenance, but they support fire incidents. And one of the things, every time that we have an incident, so when Dave was showing you that Pleasance fire earlier, which was up in North San Juan a couple of years ago, whenever we host a fire in our county or in our unit, before we ever send a piece of equipment back to their home county or home unit, we do a full inspection on that piece of equipment to make sure it's safe. And that's what guys like Mike do in support of fires. We also send them out to fires all over the state so that they can do that on behalf of other counties and other units all across the state. When we access local government equipment for our mission, we treat everyone the same. We're gonna inspect and repair a piece of equipment from City of Grass Valley the same as we would as a piece of CAL FIRE equipment. Everyone gets the same treatment. So it's very much a total force. The same as Dave was talking about, intel, map making, stuff like that. These guys get heavily involved in that as well, what we call ground support. So.
Ryan, what's your maintenance budget?
Huh.
Be careful.
Yeah. What he spends or what we're budgeted for?
That's a good one.
Both. Good question.
Yeah. It is. So in the state budget system is there's a little bit of flux in what we call our O&E, because it comes out of two different funding mechanisms. We're funded on what we call ground attack, which is our base budget, and then we also have legislatively what we call the emergency fund. And the emergency fund is what supports things that are beyond just our day-to-day business. And so the reason that it's hard to define that is because a lot of the apparatus and vehicle maintenance comes out of that fund and not out of what we're budgeted for. But I will tell you this, it is the number one operating expenditure in the unit, is vehicle maintenance, without a doubt. In fact, I would say probably 4 times as much as the next, which would be probably facilities. tremendously expensive. And a lot of it is, quite honestly, you know, while this baby may not be the shiniest thing in the world, it was a lot easier for these guys to work on. The engines were much more traditional, not as computer based. That engine down at the very end down there, for the most part, they plug a computer into it. The CARB requirements and the DEF requirements from the state of California are just unbelievable in what it requires us to spend on maintaining the fire engines. So yeah, very expensive. And you know, a new fire engine in the door for us is at state contract price is right about $350,000, and then we probably put about $80,000 to $90,000 of equipment on it. So it's a big investment. So yeah, feel free to just kind of wander around, watch your footing, take a few minutes to wander around and look at the equipment and look at the shop. These guys will answer any questions for you that you have.
No, you're good. You're good.
Type 1 fire crews that are This is one of many projects that our crews work on throughout this region. So Sean Griffiths is one of our battalion chiefs. He has Battalion 14, which is North San Juan, Columbia Hill, Smartville area. He is my longest term, I think he's my most senior employee in the unit, certainly my most senior battalion chief, a wealth of knowledge, and also very, very good at, very passionate about fuel reduction. So I'm gonna turn you over to Sean. We're gonna move some vehicles down the road, quiet it down, and let you guys get to business.
Welcome. My name's Rich Adams. I'm the district forester for the Sierra District of State Parks, and the Sierra District is 17 different parks across 6 counties. So our headquarters is up at Lake Tahoe, and we're in Mono County to the south and Plumas County to the north. A big area, but this is a great concern of ours because of the urban interface. You know, we are surrounded by homes, neighborhoods, and we were fortunate enough to secure some special funding for this work from Governor Brown in deferred maintenance funding. So you may have heard that on the news, the deferred maintenance on state parks. You know, usually you think of like water systems or buildings, but it also goes for the natural conditions. You know, we have deferred maintenance of taking care of our parks out here in the wildlands. And so we secured 3-year funding, deferred maintenance, and that's coming due. It's almost ran its course. So one of my challenges is seeking funding for these projects. I'm permanently funded, but my staff is not. So I have 2 crew leaders here with me, and these guys, they work with the crews every day out here on the grade and ensure that, you know, our standards are met and they're doing you know, what it is that we want them to do. And then behind the scenes, we have our environmental specialists. We're doing bird surveys, botany surveys, archaeology. This is a state historic park, and really the entire park, all of it, is an archaeological site. I mean, even when you're in the paved parking lot, you're in an arc site. So a lot of special concerns here, and so my challenge is how to fund that whole operation. The CAL FIRE crews, they're the most affordable resource, but it's not just, you know, bringing inmates out here and doing the work. It's the behind the scenes work, the specialty surveys, and I'm partnering with CAL FIRE, and we're looking for more funding opportunities for the future. My headquarters is working with CAL FIRE headquarters right now, and we're working on those things. Right now, I don't have ongoing funding to keep this important work going. So that is one of the challenges, and one of the talking points today is, you know, how can we continue this work? So just what we're looking at right here, it's a roadside fuel break. This is one of the few through roads on the park, and we have a lot of trails that turn into single track or some dead end spurs. But this is an important fire road because it goes through. There's neighborhood at the top and there's park infrastructure at the bottom. And so this is an important travel corridor. You know, it could be an evacuation route. It could be access for first responders. And so we're improving the safety along this road corridor. Ultimately, we need to do more. You know, this is the first pass, and we've improved safety dramatically. If you look in the background, that's the before picture. You know, that wall of dense vegetation that, you know, when you talk about how to avoid ticks, it's like stay on the trail, don't go through the dense brush. Like, that's a good way to get ticks right there, is going through there. Well, that structure was all the way to where we're standing. I mean, you would drive on this road and brush the sides of the truck, and so we've really cut it back quite a bit, and I'm really happy with the product in here. Just now while we were waiting, Sean and I were talking about, you know, how to maintain this area, and we would love to actually use fire as a maintenance tool. We were talking about maybe in the wintertime on a sunny day, you know, we could apply fire on these surface fuels and keep this area maintained that way. That may be a possibility for the future.
So that, as you mentioned, there's a lot of options here, and fire is one of them. We're looking at opportunities of working with the state parks. I know some of you are probably involved with the letter that went around from the folks that lived out off of Gold Drive that were concerned about the brush right up to their property. Well, fortunately, that was a project that we had already, working with state parks, that we had already identified. We already looked at doing some work in there, and matter of fact, our masticator just finished up in there about last week. They got back in there and they were doing a significant amount of mastication in that area, and we're hoping to expand that part of the project also. So what we're going to do here today is we're going to just walk down and take a look at this as we go. This is an area where the fuel break has been completed on both sides of the road. We are starting to get some regen. This was done back in 2017 with a combination of our Washington Ridge crews, our CAL FIRE Fuels crew from our engine companies out of Nevada City, and the Placer Center CCC crews that we have as our fire crews. All of them are coming in here, cutting and chipping, piling and chipping, going through just making this initial path. Where we're going to turn around at the bottom is kind of where that ended, and we're hoping to pick up again from there and keep working our way out to the Penn Gate on this fire access road. But as we go down here, you'll see how the conditions change. I think you're on an anthill. Very well could be. Wouldn't be the first one. Thank you. So we'll just work our way down the line here and find out, you know, just kind of discuss this as we go along. If you have any questions, feel free to question up. I'm more than happy to answer them as we go. So this project was set up in 3 phases. The first phase we started in early 2016, which was to do basically the 4290 clearance work around all the structures on the property. So we came in and helped them with their LE100, we call it DSI inspection work. We came in and did the clearance around the structures, opened it up, made it so each of those structures were more defensible. Then the second part of their projects, they identified, or the second phase is they identified their priority roads and trails. This is one of their priority roads, and we're coming in and treating this as a priority road and additional some trails further down that people are concerned about. And then the third phase is more of a landscape treatment where we're getting some of the stuff along the some of the interior stuff. Phase 2 included a lot of the boundary stuff where we're working directly with them to try to open it up in that WUI interface. As far as his total acres, I don't recall the number on total acres. Do you recall the number on total acres?
No, I'm sorry.
A few hundred. Yeah. Yes.
And another factor and that's a common question is, you know, how are you deciding where to go, where to do work, and when are you going to work near my house? That's another common question. But what we were dealing with when we got this going was tree mortality, and so you can see some of that in the background here. We were dealing with these clumps of large trees that were all dying at the same time. And then the priority became life safety, you know, dead trees over buildings and dead trees over parking lots. And so there was quite a bit of bouncing around, kind of chasing our tails while we were chasing dead trees. And so this area was a priority where there were dead trees right next to the road. And of course, dead trees right next to critical infrastructure, human lives. It was overwhelming to have to bounce all around and not finish an area, go to somewhere else, and that's still a question. I do get a lot of phone calls, you know, when are you going to work near my neighborhood, or when are you going to work near my house? And now that the tree mortality has slowed down, we are trying to be more methodical of completing an area before moving on to another area. It's more cost efficient that way if we can get to a completion. I mean, this is a completion now. It's growing back, but we're on to other areas that haven't had any treatment at all yet. And there are areas. I can pass out some maps, and so the green areas identify where we want to do work along the park boundaries, along the park roads, near the neighborhoods. And then the multicolored areas are areas that have been treated. And again, this was a priority because it's a through road. And so some of these trails are identified for future work, but they're, you know, just a single track trail is a lower priority than this through road, or particularly areas where we've had tree mortality. That's where our crews are working today, is areas of tree mortality near Stacy Lane and Empire Street. I also wanted to mention, with these dead trees here in the background, those are wildlife habitat. And up here on Osborne Hill, particularly on the north-facing slope of Osborne Hill, we've actually had California spotted owl, which is pretty amazing. You know, we're in Grass Valley, we're surrounded by development, and Empire Mine provides a wildlife refuge of sorts. We actually have black bears living in the park, and some sensitive raptors.
I'll be at my truck if you need it.
I actually, when I was marking trees, I came across a bear den, and the bear was sleeping in an archaeological site. You know, it was kind of like a little mine shelter of sorts, and there's the bear in there sleeping. Okay, thank you, and I just kept moving. But you know, that's part of the balance, is you know, providing for these multiple objectives and multiple purposes of the park.
Currently, we have about 196 of these crews around the state. Back in the day, this is one of the more historical programs that our department has. In fact, if you go to Sacramento, at the Capitol Mall, right in the Rose Rotunda right there, by the Law Enforcement Memorial looking at the west side of the Capitol, there are two buildings. The building on the north side of the Rose Garden used to be the original Resources Agency building. And up in the granite, inscribed above the columns, it says, "Give me men to match my mountains." And when that original building was built, the founder, or the Resources Agency, saw the value of the inmate program, the 3C program, and back in the 1930s, the work program under FDR. And so that was where the slogan came, "Give me men to match my mountains," and it still exists on that building to this day. Unfortunately, as we've evolved as an agency, we've seen the numbers of inmates available to us in the state system decline. The ultimate or premium number for these crews is 17 people. There's 11 on this crew right now. And that is directly related to the fact that many more inmates are released back into society on low offenses, or they choose to go into other programs within Department of Corrections. So the numbers for us has been detrimental. And Jim is the camp chief up at Washington Ridge. He can attest to that. And I was both a camp chief and a crew captain, and I can tell you the difference in production between 17 men and 11 men is geometric in nature. You just cannot get the production. And this really is the backbone of what we need to do. What they just exhibited here is at the very root what needs to be done, and that's to clear a fire break in an area between the green fuel and the fire. And in areas specifically where the dozer can't access due to steep topography, rocks, whatever, this is where the hand crews come in. and they anchor off to a safe area. You heard the captain give that briefing, that safety briefing about the escape route, which is the area the inmate, the crew would come back to a safe area. But it's a very unforgiving nature running hand crews, because typically they are in the most inaccessible and inhospitable areas that a fire is going to burn. And they don't have a fire engine with them, they don't have a tank of water, they don't have hose. All they have is the tools and the leadership of their captain. And the span of control of one captain to 11 or 17 crew members is already outside of the span of control. And so so it's very, being a crew captain is definitely a specialty within our agency. So this is Captain Chris Sauer. He's one of our captains up at Washington Ridge. I actually hired Chris. He also came from local government to our agency. He was a fire chief for a local government fire department up in South Lake Tahoe. And he, again, saw the diversity and the opportunities within our agency. Came when I was a camp chief, interviewed with me. I hired him. I don't know what went wrong, but he seemed to work out okay. So, and now he's over here working for Jim at Washington Ridge, and a very, very experienced crew captain. Got a lot of miles under his belt. So,
Don't want to do anything else, Chief.
Anything to add, Chris?
I didn't hear the whole spiel.
I just kind of gave him a general briefing on the
You can tape him.
on the camp program in general. But anything specific about your crew as it sits today, or any of the
Well,
challenges?
we just
on
spent
numbers?
3 hours cutting about 800 feet of brush on both sides of a road. So,
Yeah.
we work every day on grade projects. We do about 1 acre to 2 acres of VMP work every day, every crew in Washington Ridge. Pretty much every day. And the weather's been getting hotter, and so we've been swapping out saws and stuff and acclimating to the heat. And so
They typically run it with a saw team in front, and then a selection of crews. So you see there's 2 saws and 2 swampers. That swamper is responsible for pulling the brush and throwing the brush to whatever side of the line the captain is designated. Then the hand tools make up what they call cutters and scrapers. It starts out with the cutting tools to take a grab or take a piece of the line, and it's kind of that, you take a piece and then you move 5 feet and take another piece, and it's all about that teamwork. And by the time that last person gets done, you have clean line. And for a crew captain, he should be able to walk down that line and not trip over any stobs. There's an old saying that I don't want a stob that's higher than my fist, a Coke can. And you don't want to be tripping over stuff, because that's also their escape route. So if things get very adverse, they have to be able to egress back down that line, so it has to be safe. The general rule of thumb is they want to clear a fire break that's 1.5 times the fuel height. Now, in this tall timber like that, that's somewhat unrealistic, but the important thing is to get a cut that is wide enough to prevent fire from moving from ladder or crown to crown, but then the scrape is always going to be a minimum of 4 feet wide, a minimum. And in heavier fuels, brush, etc., very possible to see that scrape be 6 to 10 feet wide.
we can double it or triple it.
Yep.
One of the things about here, you didn't get to see really the saws do a lot, because we actually cut this last year, and it was impenetrable. You couldn't even walk off the road. And we cleaned and cleared all this last year and chipped it with the track chipper that's out here. And so I was actually in this area, and we cleared this project right here. So you don't get to see a lot about what our saws do, but they're pretty much working non-stop when we get
I think the chief hit the biggest challenge that we have is, of course, trying to maintain the staffing. We have 4 crews. We're funded for 5 crews at Washington Ridge, but because of the low numbers at the camp, we're only at 4 crews right now. Like the chief said, we'd like to see them at 17. We think optimal is 15 to 17. We try to hover the number at 15. That's been very difficult lately, and we try not to take them out of county, out of the unit, unless they have a minimum of 12. That's been very difficult. As you can see, this crew has 11. I have 3 crews with 11 and 1 with 13 right now. And those numbers go back and forth every day. Somebody needs to go see a dentist, they have to go back to Susanville. Right now, they have a little uproar in the camp system, so we're a little short on people that are going through fire training, so it might be a little while till we get some more inmates in here. Those are some of the challenges. Some of the benefits, you saw one of the things they do by creating a fire line. They don't just sit around all day, every day, waiting for a fire. They're out doing projects. Like Chris said, he did 300 feet today, 300 yards,
300
miles.
yards. We were on both sides of the Penn Hill Trail.
Exactly. So we're clearing every day. And what we like to say is that they average, of course it depends upon fuels and how thick they are, but we can clear about an acre a day, roughly. That's, it depends, more in grass and less in thick manzanita and brush and things like that. And so the benefit for us, once we get the Ponderosa Grass Valley Defense Zone going, once that happens, once we clear all of our hurdles with CEQA and get ready to go, we will commit one of these crews every single day to that project to make sure it's done. A minimum of one, maybe some days two, if there's enough work for them to do. So they'll go out there and do that until the radio starts talking, and they got to load up on their bus and go to their fires. So here's the benefit to the county. You spec out these contracts, or you bid them out for a private vendor to come do them. Talking with some of the private vendors, I've never hired a private vendor, but to talk to them about acreage, once again, it depends upon the fuels that they have to clear up. Anywhere from $4,000 to $11,000 an acre is what I've been told. That's what you're supposed to bid them at. Now, these folks, less than $250 a day, which is a substantial savings. I'm not good at Common Core math, but if you take $11,000 and you subtract $250 from that, that's a little bit more than 10 grand, right? That the county's saving every single day in the state of California.
You're right, you're not good at Common Core.
Yeah, you're right. I think you have to create those 4 boxes and yeah, it's a substantial savings. These folks do great work. And this is just one of the facets of the things that they do. They do a lot of different things. We've had a ton of, well, I shouldn't say a ton, but we've had several rescues down in canyons. These folks, not only will they cut line and clear brush, if you or one of your family members gets hurt down at the river and we have to carry you out for 4 or 5 miles, if the sheriff's department isn't able to bring in helicopters, H-20 isn't available, we can't haul them out with a helicopter because it's night or bad weather conditions, then rather than diverting 5 or 10 engines, we can have one hand crew come and you can do a whole lot of work with 15 folks that are more than happy to pick up that Stokes and help carry them out with the leadership of the captain. So CAL FIRE believes pretty strongly in diversity and having a lot of different things. You saw dozers, you're going to see aircraft, you saw fire engines. We have other types of hand crews besides just our inmate crew. My partner, Joe Tenike here, who also is in charge of the Truckee Tahoe area, is in charge of our camp in Christian Valley called the Placer Center. Joe, can you give us an intro? We lean real heavy on them when our numbers are down. He has 2 crews out of the Placer Center.
We have 2 crews that type out just like the Washington Ridge crews. Every year they go through their readiness exercise where they get qualified and type out as type 1 hand crews. And so the Placer Center of the California Conservation Corps is located at the very end of Christian Valley Road, just a little bit up Interstate 80 above Auburn. And so there's 2 fire crews there. They train to the same standard as these Washington Ridge crews do. They go out, they do the same type of project work, but in different locations. In fact, they've worked some on this state park right here as well. And then their rotation is to do the same thing. And then it's a little bit different this year because we do have 1 California National Guard crew currently working in the unit also on the North Fork project, which, as Chief Estes said, is one of the 2 of the 30 projects that the governor identified in a 45-day report. And then we got one of our Forestry Tech Davis crews, which is about a 9 to 10 person crew that's currently working in the unit on fuels projects. So it is diverse, and we do help out in the oil risk environment, like they said, whether it's cutting a line in for a rescue of someone, or we had a hazmat up Interstate 80 and we cut hand line in, so folks in those big level A suits that you see that make them look like they're on a different planet can access the vehicle that was over the side to stop the release and contain the spill. So that's pretty much what I got. Anything else? Any questions? Thank you.
All right.
So as you guys remember from the Board of Supervisors workshop, I talked about those fuel reduction crews that are fully funded. So as Joe mentioned, we have one of them that's assigned to Davis that is currently working in the unit. With the May revise being passed in the governor's budget working through, after July 1st, NEU will take possession of another 11-person fuels reduction crew. And we will most likely house them somewhere on the 80 corridor, but they're going to be available unit-wide, and specifically their mission is fuels reduction. They're initially not going to be a fire crew. So, you know, like Chief Tenike stated with the National Guard, they're on a 1-year deployment. A lot of this is based on the declining numbers out of our inmate camp program. When those numbers were robust and we had 17-man crews and we were loaded across the state, you know, times were good, but unfortunately, you know, that is just not the way it is. And so as an agency, we're having to look at ulterior methods to keep those hand crews out working on both fuel reduction projects, conservation projects, and obviously fire suppression. So the evolving of our department, as Supervisor Anderson said earlier. So, okay.
Do inmates who go through the program after, you know, they serve their time, is there opportunity to come back and work with CAL FIRE?
Not, you know, probably not with CAL FIRE, but there are opportunities with other agencies, and certainly, you know, the camp program does qualify as part of the rehabilitation programs of the Department of Corrections. Most of the camps across the state have some sort of what they call a camp product. So they'll have like maybe a sew shop that makes canvas and bags and Cordura products. Some of them have fabrication shops. Some of them do custom furniture, and those are all part of the rehabilitation products. You know, each of the camps have a wastewater treatment plant, and inmates are trained in that skill. So yeah, there are opportunities out there for them in many of the things that they do.
Do all these guys, do they volunteer for this program?
Yes, that's a great question. They have to volunteer for it. They have to pass both written and physical tests in order to become part of these crews. And so, you know, and that's another problem that we've had in the declining numbers is as the Department of Corrections has opened up a lot of other programs available to inmates, you know, it's competing interests, if you know what I mean. Let's just say there are some programs that are easier than what Captain Sauer is demonstrating here, if you get my drift.
One of the hardest jobs you'll ever do.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's one of the most. I used to say when I was a crew captain, I went home every day with a blue T-shirt stained with salt stains and a clear head. And now it's exactly the opposite. Very satisfying job. So
it is.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it.
No problem, Chief.
The compound as it sits is all entirely owned by the U.S. Forest Service, with the exception of this building here that was built by CAL FIRE. But we have long existed in an interagency cooperative relationship here within the ECC. So the Forest Service does operate in there. They operate on a different system for the federal resources. On the state side here, our Emergency Command Center is the second busiest state command center in the state of California, behind Riverside in Paris, California. They dispatch right in the neighborhood of, give or take, about 35,000 911 calls per year. About 100,000 incoming phone calls per year. We have contracts with 30 different local government entities, including all of the fire agencies in Nevada County, including the entire east side in both Placer and Nevada County, all of Yuba County, and in Placer County, the Placer County Fire Department and City of Auburn. In addition, they're an air ambulance coordination center for Northern California, and they dispatch ground ambulance units for Bi-County, Sierra Nevada, and AMR. So it's a very diverse center. All of the personnel in here perform emergency medical dispatching, and so as our partners with the SO know, anytime a 911 call originates, it comes into a law enforcement agency, either a sheriff's office or CHP, and that's called a PSAP. And what that does is once they determine that it's a fire or medical emergency, they transfer it to a secondary PSAP. And that secondary PSAP for our county is right here at the Grass Valley Emergency Command Center. So I want to introduce Fire Captain Garrett Radovich. Our BC position is actually vacant right now. This is one of the operations that Chief Mike Webb oversees, as well as air operations. So I'm going to turn it over to Garrett real quick to give you a brief overview, and we'll take you onto the command floor where all the magic happens. So, Garrett?
Well, hello. How's everybody doing? nice and warm. I promise it's much cooler inside. It's like a refrigerator in there. I'll take you guys onto the command floor, and we can kind of squeeze to the back of the room and not impact the floor too much, and we can probably just make a lap around it. There's 4 different frequencies in there that we're constantly dispatching on and supporting incidents on, along with several others that we listen to. So as we go in, I'll kind of give you guys the layout of the floor and why we do things the way we do in here. And there'll probably be plenty of live calls happening and still plenty of radio traffic, so we can keep talking to a minimum. If there's any sidebar conversations, to the back of the room, please.
Usually when we bring a tour in, the radio goes dead.
Yeah,
you know, that's
it's quite possible to be
that's kind of
too,
Murphy's
so.
Law. But do you want to talk just real quickly about the difference between a command center versus a dispatch center? What makes your position as a duty officer important?
Sure. So the difference between dispatch center and command center is dispatch center, calls come in, dispatchers working there process the call, they send it right out. Command center, we have captains working on the command floor. So there's a captain here 24 hours a day. Sometimes there's multiple of us. One is designated the ECC duty officer. So with that comes some privilege of changing responses. So if we get a phone call that says it's a fire and we get to take multiple calls for it, and it turns out it's really just somebody having a campfire, we're not going to launch aircraft and bulldozers and all those things to it. I have the ability to modify that call down to what is more appropriate as the battalion chief and fire engine. On the other side of that, if it's something that somebody says is just a smoldering little something, but it's way far out in the woods and we have wind or something that makes it sound like it could be much worse, we can ramp that up and send a lot more resources. Same with a vehicle accident or anything along those lines as well. If it sounds like there's a lot of patients, a standard plan might only have one ambulance. We could send multiple ambulances or an air ambulance with that response. So it gives us the ability to change the response plan based off the information that we're receiving on the 911 side.
And Garrett just didn't grow up in a command center. Let him know what you did before you were a captain at the command center.
Well, prior to working here, I was a captain on a fire engine in a couple of different parts of the state. I also worked as an engineer in several fire stations in this unit. And I spent a little bit of time working in Southern California. I also spent time working on our incident management teams. So I have a pretty good background prior to coming here on the fire side and seeing it firsthand instead of just from a phone call.
That's the beauty of it. We have a company officer that actually worked on the fire ground, so when he is hearing that radio traffic of units arriving at scene, he could tell almost by the tone of their voice, having been in that position, rather than just somebody who sits in the refrigerated room all of their career. He has several years, decades of background, not decades, but at least a decade of, but don't want to call you too old. I mean, he is bald,
Well,
but it's not by choice. So the point is, he's a very experienced field person, and that's what CAL FIRE does, is we bring experienced field people in to be the company officer in the command center so that they have the experience of working out in the field and bring that experience into our dispatch centers.
911 calls, they are always picked up first by law enforcement.
Always.
That's
they all. So they're then they're sent here. Sometimes.
yes. So it first is filtered through law enforcement. If it's determined it's a medical or fire related or hazardous materials related type incident, something that's not law enforcement primarily, it's transferred to us. From there, we determine what the call type is again, and send the appropriate response.
And that's anywhere in the state. That's mandated by the 911 system. Law enforcement always has priority, and then they transfer. And then those transfer times are usually pretty quick, you know. And but that's state law.
This is the command floor. So each one of the pods here is functioning as a dispatch command frequency. So here to the start here on the left is our east side frequency. So everything from about Cisco Grove and Interstate 80 onto the east side of the Sierras all the way to the Nevada state line, including Lake Tahoe, is dispatched and supported from this one frequency. Now, when I say one frequency, that's its primary job. That's where it is primarily dispatched out of. However, any of these pods can function on all the frequencies. So if that person's tied up on a 911 call, the person next to them is able to pick it up, or if they're tied up, anybody else can pick up the radio traffic. So we have it selected up so that it's primarily the loud frequency that you're listening to. However, you keep an unselected volume also, so the stuff that you aren't primarily listening to is also still kind of
within the background noise. So you, after a while, get an ear trained to hearing traffic that's not yours and traffic that is yours, and you can answer each other's stuff knowing what everybody else is doing. So it takes a little bit of mind coordination and hand coordination. It takes most people about 6 months to a year to really get the hang of it in here because it's very complex and it takes a lot of practice. So, so Danelle is one of our other captains. She's working today in the role of dispatching. She's not working as the duty officer. That's what Andrew Rouse behind you is doing. So when I said earlier that the ECC duty officer, the captain that's in charge, is making the total decision to sort of upgrade or downgrade something or just let it roll like it normally does, that's his job today, along with all the other notifications that happen to the chief officers. Moving around the board there, and to the corner is David. David is one of our communications operators. He is dispatching NEU West, so it's kind of a complicated frequency. Its primary job is dispatching all of the state resources in Nevada, Yuba, and Placer County on the western slope. So Cisco Road back to the west. It also dispatches the city of Auburn and some other stuff in Placer County all the way out to the El Dorado County line. Where I say it gets kind of complicated is because if it's a state fire or an incident that's going to be determined to run on that frequency, there could be Nevada County resources coming back up on that frequency. So dispatched off their primary and switching to that one. So that one gets a lot of traffic with pretty much all the resources that we can dispatch. Same with Yuba County. We work our way around, and in the corner where Eli is, another communications operator we have, his position's probably the most complicated in the building for as far as responsibilities start with. He's the primary 911 answerer, so he answers the 911 calls as the first. He's also working foothill frequency. So foothill for us is Yuba County kind of rural area of volunteer departments like Foothill Fire, Dobbins, and so on. He's also the primary aircraft dispatcher in the summertime. So if we have a state wildland fire, he is ordering the aircraft off of that fire, which is through an intercom system that we have to place our order all the way to Reading. They just are the overseer of aircraft. Aircraft right next to as it comes back to the middle, I know it's kind of hard to see, and if you guys want to push over this way, you can. We'll slowly go around the room in a moment. In the middle is one of our newest additions is Mr. Stark. He's a new captain here. It's a training platform, and then if we don't have anybody in training, it usually is the ECC duty officer's position. That way you can see what's going on in all the frequencies and hear what's going on. Chris Africa, another communications operator we have, is working Nevada County. So that's all of Nevada County, that's Grass Valley, Penn Valley, and so on. So when I said that David's frequency gets complicated, so does Mr. Africa's. His can have state resources switching over to his frequency on Nevada County as well if it's a local incident. So we try to keep the balance of our resources onto one frequency. So there's one person handling that incident based off of if it's a state incident or if it's a local incident, and keep the frequencies as balanced as possible so they're not overwhelmed. Any questions so far? No, that's a lot of.
Total staffing, Garrett?
So total staffing during, well, overall staffing, there are 5 captains assigned to the ECC and 14 communications operators and a battalion chief. Those are split up over the course of the week. So we provide 5 people during the day, which is typically 2 captains and the remainder of comm ops. And then at night, there are 2 comm ops and a captain that works support until usually it calms down, or usually around 10 o'clock, maybe 11 at night. And then they sleep next door in the expanded building. If there's an issue they need to be woken up for or a notification needs to be made, they're called on the phone or paged, and then they can return to the floor also to help.
Do they ever rotate out of here?
To the comm ops?
Yeah.
No, they typically stay here. Some of them do take on extra jobs that the department offers, so they could go and help another command center, or if there's a large fire going on and they have qualifications outside of this room that gives them the ability to work somewhere else, they'll go do that. We do have a pretty decent turnover rate just from people finding other jobs or moving on to other organizations that they want to dispatch for. Captains rotate quite a bit more.
Region 4?
Yep, that's next. So one of the extras, I know earlier the chief touched on that we dispatch for our SSV air ambulance, so we do that for 5 counties. So essentially If there's an order for an air ambulance, we take the call, we process it, we determine who's the closest and available air ambulance, and dispatch them, call back the requester, and let them know who it is with an ETA. So on top of that duty, we also are OES Region 4, so we are the overseer of the 12 counties listed up behind you. So if there's any sort of order that comes in for strike teams or overhead going to a large incident, we take those requests and with the coordination of the operational area coordinators determine who the best county is suited to take on those requests. So whether it's fire engines or people going out to support the incident as individuals. So we oversee that, and that's something we manage every single day of the year, because there's resources that go in and out of service as well, or there's other types of resources being ordered for water, rescue, floods, name it, and there's always a possibility.
We are the coordination center for Region 4. As Garrett said, it's 12 counties. That's really supporting the OES, or the local government mission, and we receive zero funding from the state or from OES to support that mission. Last year, these folks processed 10,000 requests and filled 10,000 orders for local government in support of large fires. So, I mean, arguably, we are the end-run customer as CAL FIRE, and we use and maximize that master mutual aid or the mutual aid agreement in the state of California, but it doesn't come without a price, because the coordination for those local government resources comes right out of this, and that is on top of the day-to-day, hour-to-hour, minute-to-minute 911 calls that they're processing. That's the one thing that is constant and never stops around the clock are the 911s.
Definitely.
It is the most challenging job. I've never sat at a pod, I've never dispatched a call, but I will tell you, true to my heart, this is the most challenging job that our department has, and these people are some of the most underappreciated employees that we have. They do an unbelievable job. The public really doesn't know about it because most people never get to see this, but they got a special place in my heart as a fire chief, that's for sure.
To firefighting, and got trained in air attack, or qualified some years back, and here he is. So, Captain Deacon, all yours, buddy.
Welcome everybody to Grass Valley Air Attack Base. This is a joint interagency facility with United States Forest Service, and we gonna operate the base in conjunction with them. We work in uniform. These aircraft that are based here are pretty key components to meeting our strategic fire plan, which you guys are familiar with, and keeping all of our fires burning. So we have two S2T air tankers, Type 3 air tankers, and then we have an OV-10 Bronco, which is our air attack plane, and sometimes you'll hear it referred to as the spotter plane.